Opponents of equal protection want to scare you into thinking that an abolition bill would automatically sentence every woman who gets an abortion to death. But that's just not true. Instead, equal protection would provide due process and require case-by-case examination by a justice system that demands near unanimous agreement to punish anyone at all. So what most people aren't aware of, that I just want to spend a few minutes here, is what the justice system looks like. Again, because you think, oh, we passed a bill that says abortion's murder, so everybody gets, no. There's an entire justice system. What's up?
Yeah, can you slide that over?
There's an entire justice system that for every case to be considered on a case-by-case basis. So at the beginning of the justice system, we normally have someone makes a report, right? It's normally just a citizen that makes a report. They say, hey, I saw something suspicious, and they report it to whom?
The police.
They report it to the police. Thank you. I love interaction. They report it to the authorities, all right? You're going to see my drawing skills up here. Hey, how's that?
Nice.
So they report it to the police. And what do the police do? The police investigate, right? There's a magnifying glass. The police investigate the case. And they determine, is there probable cause to believe that a crime has been committed? And normally, in order to, once they determine there's probable cause, to collect more evidence, now they have to go to a judge and get a judge to issue a warrant. They have to convince the judge, normally the justice of the peace, that there's probable cause to believe that a crime has been committed. Then the judge issues a warrant for them to continue their investigation, collecting evidence. Once they feel like they have enough, then they go to a prosecutor. Okay? Which this is the prosecutor here, and they have a tie on. Okay? So they go to a prosecutor, and they say, hey, we've got enough evidence. We think this is not the person. This is the reporter. We think this person committed a crime. The prosecutor, maybe tells them go get some more evidence, or maybe they feel like there is enough evidence. If the prosecutor thinks there is enough evidence, then we're talking about a felony here when we're talking about murder. So they've got to go, in almost every situation, they have to then go to, does anybody know? Not to a jury yet, or it is a jury.
Grand jury.
Grand jury, all right? They've got to go to a grand jury. And they've got to convince that grand jury that there's probable cause to believe that a crime has been committed. And then the grand jury decides whether or not to indict. Indict is what it's called. And when they indict, it's called they issue a true bill. True bill that they believe that there's probable cause. So they go to a grand jury and they have to convince them. And the grand jury deliberates it behind closed doors. And then they say, yes, indictment. Okay, so now where do you go from a grand jury? Now the other side, once you have the indictment, okay, now you can arrest the person, right? You arrest them, you bring them in, you arraign them. At that point, the defendant's side, they're provided an attorney if they can't afford one, or they hire their own. Then they may try to get the case thrown out. Maybe the evidence, wasn't properly gathered and things like that. So they try to get the case thrown out by the judge. Okay, there's a gavel. So they try to get the case thrown out by a judge, but the judge says, no, we're going to, everything's, all the law's been followed so far, so we're going to let the case continue. All right, so then we move on to a trial. Okay, then at trial, then we're putting on the case in front of the jury, right? Jury of your peers. And you're putting the case on to them, and there's actually two parts to it. There's actually the first part, which is the guilt-innocence part of the phase of the trial. And that is, did they or did they not do this thing? Or really, it's not did they not. It's just, did they do it? And if you can't say they did do it, then they're acquitted, right? You have to prove that they did do it. And now, up here, in order to investigate, you kind of have to have reasonable suspicion, and then you have to have probable cause to indict. And now at this level, in order to convict somebody of committing a crime, is an extremely high burden, is what we call it in the law. So you have to prove not just that a probable cause, not just preponderance of the evidence, not just what's called clear and convincing evidence, but you have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt. I mean, that's a very high bar to prove that something happened. You have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. So that happens in the first phase. If the jury convicts, then you move on to the second phase of the trial, which is the sentencing phase. Then you can bring in all your character witnesses, say, well, this is a nice person, this is the first time they've ever done anything, and yada, yada, yada. And you get to hear kind of aggravating circumstances, like how heinous, you get to consider more how heinous the crime is and all that. And then mitigating circumstances, like, they were a nice person, they're married, they have children, things like that. The jury gets to consider all these things in deciding what the sentence should be. And then the jury then decides the sentence. All right, that then happens. From there, the judge, if the jury did something against what's called the great weight of the evidence, the judge could throw it out, or he could declare a mistrial and they could do it all over again. But assuming everything's gone properly, then you move on to the defendant will then appeal the case, right? And then when you appeal the case, that normally goes to a 3-judge panel in most places. Okay, now you have 3 judges who now consider everything that's gone on before and make sure it was all done lawfully. Then, if we're talking about murder, if we're talking about capital murder, you get an automatic appeal to your state's high court, to your state's high criminal court, which is normally something like 9 people. And again, if we're talking about capital murder, if someone's actually seeking the death penalty, you actually have an automatic appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay, which that would be another times 9 over here. Then, in fact, I'm going to do it over here again, just so you get the idea here. Times 9 again. Then, guess what? Even if the U.S. Supreme Court says, nope, yep, all law was followed, there's something called habeas corpus appeals, which means you get to do all this all over again. Okay? This is why it takes so long for there to be, punishment carried out in these kind of cases. Well, let's say you work your way through all of that. Then at the very end, there's still someone who has the power to unlock, how's that? Unlock your jail cell and let you go. Who is that? The governor. The governor has the power to reduce your sentence, which is called commuting it, or to totally pardon you. Okay? So this is called our justice system. This is the justice system that protects the lives of born people. And as you can see, one of the main things that this justice system is designed to protect is the accused, right? It's designed to protect the accused. That's what we call due process. This is the process, and it's due process if it's enough process to reach a good result. This is the process that protects defendants, and this is the process that protects the lives of born people. All equal protection is it says that this justice system that protects the lives of born people should be the exact same justice system that protects the lives of people who are not yet born. That's all it is. So whenever someone says, oh no, you just want, no one's getting automatic anything. Every case has to be considered like this. And people are like, well, you're just going to give mothers a death penalty. Do you really think, and by the way, this has to be virtually unanimous among all these people, do you really think that this justice system in our country today is going to give any mother the death penalty? Or if they did, it would only be for the most extreme, heinous of case. That's the way it works in this country. So even if a prosecutor did pursue charges and a grand jury did indict and a judge did say law was followed, they did convict, they did sentence, they upheld all of it times 2, and then again, the governor could still commute their sentence or pardon them. Let's set this aside. So, abolition bills call for equal protection. But abolition bills don't control the outcomes of these investigations. If there is an investigation at all, abolition bills do not determine the charges, what they are. If there even are charges, abolition bills do not determine the guilt or the innocence or the sentence. Whether anyone involved with an abortion is investigated, prosecuted, convicted, or sentenced, and for what, if anything, would be up to the justice system that is already there to protect born persons, law enforcement, prosecutors, grand juries, judges, trial juries, appellate courts, and the governors. Even if charged, a guilty party could be convicted and sentenced to as little as 1 day in jail, or get deferred adjudication, or do community service, or even be granted complete immunity for testifying against the abortionist. Opponents of equal protection want to scare you into thinking that an abolition bill would automatically sentence every woman who gets an abortion to death, but that's just not true. Instead, equal protection would provide due process, and require case-by-case examination by a justice system that demands near unanimous agreement to punish anyone at all. That's all we're asking for. And why is this so important? Well, it's important because the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, as we've already read, requires it. No state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. The protection by this same justice system. No state shall deny this to any person. Well, I believe a baby is a person. I believe that I was a person. I believe that my 10 children were persons. I believe that all of you were persons when we were in our mother's wombs.